So my name is Claire Wyatt. I am the Vice President of Business Strategy and Marketing Science at Albertsons Media Collective. Albertsons Media Collective is the retail media network of Albertsons companies. We have about 2,200 stores in the United States. And a little bit about my background, because I think that's helpful as to why I'm here. So I actually started my retail media journey building out, for those of you who are familiar, Target's retail media network. So worked at Roundel for a while, and Albertsons is my second go round on retail media. It feels, for those of us who play sports, it feels like a very high level sport. It feels like you have to kind of show up every day and be very aggressive, and then you kind of fall a lot. I don't know if that feels like the theme here at all, but so my role specifically, I get to do two things, which I'll touch on both a little bit today, but mostly focus on the measurement and audience piece, is I lead our business strategy side and then also our marketing science side. So when I say business strategy, we're looking at where we are and then where we are going and what are the specific growth levers that we are focused on to drive the business forward, both for what we call the collective, so our retail media network, and then for the Albertsons business as a whole. And then the measurement science side is all of the super nerdy stuff that I love. So it is focused on our measurement methodologies, it is focused on analytics, and it is focused on audience insights. So a couple things that I want to talk about is retail media 101, and sort of the emergence and the movement that we've seen in retail media sort of since its beginning to now where it is kind of unfolding. So the first thing that we have seen, I would say the first real wave of retail media is retail media 1.0. So it was very much a focus for companies starting retail media networks, and it's, we're gonna build this and we are going to drive gross margin to the company. So in the United States, this is a lot of monetizing our own digital properties. So a lot of on-site search and on-site display. And then what we've seen is a pivot to retail media 2.0, which is retail media really operating as media platforms. So this is, instead of just a margin driver, it is now we're trying to be sort of our own Meta, our own Google, our own Pinterest, kind of fill in the blank. The next movement that we're seeing, which retail media 3.0 gets used a lot, and I want to be really specific about what I mean here, because I think retail media 3.0, the conversation that's happening around that is, oh, it's just in-store as a new channel. And I actually don't think that that's true. I think in-store as a channel is really retail media 2.0. Retail media 3.0 is a complete integration of the entire business that perpetuates a flywheel of retail media. So it is taking the business as a whole. How do you gather as much data about your customers in a very privacy-focused way as quickly as possible, and then use that data to then monetize what we now call retail media, but my expectation is in the future it'll be something different and something even more data-centric. So one of the specific places I think we see this is retail media called a channel. Retail media, yes, is a channel, especially for things that you own. So in-store is a great example, on-platform properties, site app. But it is also a base layer that supports other channels. So with your audience data, being able to utilize that audience data, push those audiences out to Google, to Facebook, to different CTV partners. So when we talk about spend shifting into retail media, it is somewhat shifting to retail media from other channels, but it is actually really a different way to activate those channels with that first party data. We just talk about cookies deprecating all the time. I read an article literally before I got on stage that was like, Google's like, maybe never mind, just kidding. Which I feel like they do that all the time just to keep us on our toes. So maybe this year will be a pivotal year. I think we've talked a lot about that. Hopefully it is, because I'm getting a little sick of talking about it. But then the second piece, I think, is sort of this pivot of retail media shifting from 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0, and who is sort of differentiating themselves from the pack, and then where is the really exponential growth going to happen in terms of retail media. Okay, so specifically when we're talking about measurement and audience, it is the value proposition of a retail media network is closed loop measurement and your audience data. That is it. That is the value of retail media. So when we look at the important attributes of retail media, the first thing to our CPG partners, to brands that invest with us, is traffic and scale. That gets really hard. I think Albertsons is a great example in the US. We are not the dominant player in terms of traffic and scale. So where we have to win is in terms of traffic quality. So thinking about, are we targeting the right audience? Do we know the people really, really well? Are we getting very specific with what we can do? And then when you move away from that audience, that ability to target, it goes then into closed loop measurement. And what are the KPIs that you can actually tie to your campaigns? If I'm sure I see a couple familiar faces. I feel like I get overly labeled with incrementality a lot, which I feel very bad about, because I actually don't think incrementality is a silver bullet at all to retail media measurement. I think there are a significant number of other KPIs that we should be looking at, but that incrementality piece and knowing that the ad actually drove an incremental sale is still very, very valuable to your CPG clients. And then lastly, I think it was mentioned earlier, is that there is just a general lack of standards. It is very much the wild, wild west. Every methodology is different. It's very hard to compare methodologies. And so that is one of the things, not only solving for standards, there's a lot of great work that the IAB is doing, but also how do we put the data in a very safe way without losing our value proposition in the hands of the CPGs so that they can drive their own measurement. Okay, so specifically with audiences, this is really just the basics of it. So how are we targeting the right people at the right time? So really 3 things about when I think about the importance of audience and when we're building out our audience strategy is, are we targeting real life customers? I think one of the things, which I'm excited, a little teaser for the session about the IAB, is the importance of loyalty data. If you have that loyalty data, if you have that really high fidelity data, it is very easy to close the loop on your shoppers. And then also a tie with audience objective is, are your audiences specifically tied to the campaign objective, which is then tied to the KPIs that you are trying to drive for your business? And then lastly, reliable data. I think one of the things that's very important about your audience strategy as well is not only are you targeting the right audience, but then after the campaign, are you able to say what that audience did, what that audience experienced, and then are you using those audience insights to perpetuate future campaign planning? So really, really quick about this, I kind of already touched on it, about 2,300 retail locations across 34 states. So it's fairly large, but this is sort of the size and scale that we are dealing with as a comparative data point. So we see about 35 million customers a week. Other key thing here is 38 million of our customers are loyalty members, which means that we are able to very, very closely track what they're doing. A data point that's not on here is we have about 30 million unique visitors to our digital sites every month. So we're seeing people a lot through our digital channels, but one of the other things is that 97% of our sales still happen in store. So one of the things that's really interesting, I think, about the US market versus, say, the European market as an example, is the US market has really expanded into digital and store is a lag, versus Europe, where store is so much of the forefront and digital is potentially a lag. And so even though we have really, really massive reach, massive unique users, the highest percentage of our traffic is still in our stores. So that is one thing that we are, I would say, behind in, to be completely transparent, and one of the things that we're trying to figure out. Okay, so 3 key pieces of measurement as well. And one thing that I will say, just a note too, I will do Q&A because that's my, I want this to be helpful. I have nothing to really sell here besides just telling our story. So if you have questions, please feel free in a little bit. But there's really 3 things that we are thinking about at Albertsons when it comes to measurement. So the first and most basic is closing the loop. So this is really tying the advertising that you saw either in store, off platform, or on your app, on your site, actually to a sale that happened. So we talk about closed loop all the time. I think if you have a retail media bingo card, closed loop is probably going to be in the center free box. But it is important to, especially in a store like ours where it is very heavy grocery, to include not just the online, but also the in-store together. One of the things that we are doing at Albertsons Media Collective is we are able to build out all of our measurement by ourselves. So we have great partners in terms of LiveRamp. We have great partnerships with Pinterest, with Google, where they are sending us their data. We are connecting it to our data via a clean room solution, and we are able to close the loop that way. I know that is not always possible for people. So one of the ways to get around this is to utilize third-party partners in order to help you actually create that closed loop of measurement, because it is something that CPGs demand. One of the other things, I think we have lots of CPG friends in the audience. What I would say as a retail media network is, because you are the one spending the money, you can demand the type of measurement that you need and you want, especially as budgets are shifting away from digital channels that have better measurement into retail media. You can continue to push, and that really is what makes our industry better. So I also, as I'm saying that, I'm like, hopefully I'm not creating any enemies in the audience from our other retail media network friends. Sorry, you can do it, I promise. Secondly, incrementality. So again, kind of ad nauseum, incrementality is a super, super important type of measurement. So I'm gonna talk out of two sides of my mouth here, because I am gonna talk about other KPIs as well, is when we talk to our clients, the way that we do incrementality measurement, where we have specific holdout groups. As I've been in conversations with P&G, with PepsiCo, with Unilever, they all go, oh, that's exactly how we measure our campaigns too. Great. The thing that I will say about ROAS, so a return on ad spend metric versus an incremental ROAS, is for those of us who have been in media for a very, very long time, you know that you can just throw display ads along the customer's path to purchase and generate a huge ROAS for that campaign. But are you actually generating incrementality, or are you just throwing display ads along the customer's path to purchase? Which I totally get then why it is a push to move towards an incrementality methodology to make sure that that ad spend is actually valid. I also think, to the earlier presentation, that solves a lot of the fraud conversation as well, because you are not going to drive a high incremental ROAS if there is a significant amount of fraud. So for incrementality as well, there are so many different methodologies. There is, again, just to shout out the IAB MRC measurement standards that they just launched. I think there's about 4 different methodologies that they list within that document. The important thing is not necessarily which methodology you're choosing. It is, are you being transparent about your methodology? The feedback that I hear over and over and over again from CPGs, not about us, but about some of our, about other competitors in the space, is that when you share an incremental ROAS number, they have no idea how they got it. They don't understand, was it extrapolated, was it not extrapolated, how much of this is actually valid versus, or how much of this is actually tied to my store versus how much of this is the market. So if you can be, even if your methodology feels very, very simple, if you can at least be transparent about, this is how I calculated this, so that whatever client you're working with, they can have a very overly aggressive summer intern look at it and understand it, then that's great. Lastly, KPIs tied to objectives. So I think we've really honed in on incrementality significantly. Lots of retail media networks now are pushing up the funnel in terms of their solutions that they're offering. So I know for Albertsons, we have more lower funnel options, more traditional, I would say. So on-site app, closer to the point of sale. We also offer CTV type of solutions. We offer advertising with Pinterest. We're offering advertising with Meta. These are all more upper funnel awareness type of channels. And as we move this direction, both here and broadly as an industry, there's going to be new KPIs that we need to showcase in order to show the true value of our media campaigns. So two that I think I'm very excited about and passionate about are new customer lifetime value, is specifically as we move towards more awareness-based campaigns. One, because I think by themselves, I think they're very valuable, but I also think they're very valuable when you look at them in context of an incrementality metric as well. Because you can say, okay, yes, these sales were incremental. Maybe we didn't get as much incrementality as we wanted from this campaign, but basically all of those incremental sales were new customers. Awesome, that's great. Probably a huge customer lifetime value. So I apologize, this is an eye chart, but I forced my marketing team to put it in here because I assumed that you would want to take pictures of this. So I apologize that it is very, very small. But when we think about objectives, really thinking about awareness, consideration, sales, retention, there are specific strategies associated with those, specific channels associated with each of those objectives, and then specific KPIs associated with each of those objectives. So one of the most important things to do when you are running media for your clients is to align at the beginning of the campaign of what is actually your objective and therefore what should your KPIs be. There are so many times, there was actually this one example with a company that I will not name specifically, but it was, they wanted it to be a sales driving campaign, but it basically was just the brand with beautiful creative. It had gorgeous creative, but it was just like, hey, here we are. And that was kind of it. And it did horribly in terms of a ROAS methodology because it was just kind of, huzzah, here's our product. That is a great example of that is absolutely an awareness campaign. Do not have ROAS or iROAS as a KPI. And that was such a painful conversation post the campaign, and it could have been solved had we had that conversation earlier and gone, great creative, beautiful, love it for an awareness campaign. The ROAS is gonna be terrible. Are you okay with that? Did everybody get a chance to take a picture? I saw a lot of phones out. Okay, great. So one thing that I want to talk about specifically, we are very proud of our partnership with Pinterest. I know Pinterest is maybe not the coolest social media. I'm not cool. I love Pinterest. But they have been a really great partner in terms of allowing access to their data in a very privacy safe way with access to our data. And so we are able to close the loop via LiveRamp. LiveRamp has again, when you're thinking about third-party partners, ton of options, ton of ways to connect to different data sources to do that closed loop measurement. But what we were able to do is create that measurement, build out that tie, and then actually see sales and unit lift. So see that incrementality from the Pinterest channel specifically. Okay, awesome. All right, lastly, one thing that I want to harp on, I feel like there's two things that I'm known for. One thing that I'm known for is incrementality. The second thing I've known for is now I'm like the standardization girl, which it's fine. But I do really, really believe in standardization. So one of the things that we worked on really heavily, then handed over to the IAB in the US, is sort of a view and a framework on what needs to be standardized across the retail media network space. What was great is that we had a lot of partners. We had brands that worked with us. We had agencies that worked with us. We had other retail media networks review the standards and essentially got a jump start on, okay, this is, as an industry, this is what we should push for. So 4 kind of things that we're really thinking about, focused on as this sort of consortium moved forward is 1, product characteristics. So product characteristics meaning, is creative standardized? And if creative isn't standardized, is there a very specific reason that it's standardized? So say, for example, your homepage is your special little baby. It is beautiful. Don't anybody dare call it ugly. Your creative might need to be different than somebody else's creative. That's fine, but again, just be transparent about it. Secondly is performance and measurement. There is a huge push in the industry This doesn't specifically say that, but a move towards viewability. So that is a thing that I think we're going to see a lot of in the future, is more retail media networks moving towards viewable impressions versus just general impressions as exist today. And then with that, third-party verification. So very much retail media networks are dinged for grading their own homework. In the future, that is likely not going to be the case. I think there will be more third-party measurement providers validating what is given by retail media networks, and then also some, maybe not complete, transparency of data, but in, again, like via a clean room as an example. And then lastly, capabilities. So if you work with, I feel so bad for our CPG clients sometimes, because they have to hire these huge teams to deal with every retail media network because we're all so different. My hope is that in the future, dealing with us will be similar. So if you have a clean room solution with Albertsons, it'll be similar to your clean room solution with, say, a Walmart as an example. So that is sort of my last push. I will continue to beat the standardization drum until we are closer. But that is all of the prepared content I have, but I would be happy to answer any questions. No? None? Perfect.
Thanks for the presentation. Just figured I'd ask if you could expand a little bit on your Albertsons personal view on new customers and CLTV. There's different ways of defining those. I guess on the new customer front, you're new to you as a retailer versus new overall.
Yep.
And then when you're talking with your CPG partners, what's the standard language that you're hearing about what is acceptable from a customer lifetime value assessment versus what's kind of over extrapolation?
Yep. So for the last piece, extrapolation of the customer lifetime value. Yes. There's many overly egregious extrapolations. Yeah. So the first, so your first piece of the question, new to brand, what is the constraint that we have, which I wouldn't say is a hindrance, I would say it's just something that we haven't solved, is the new to brand has to be new to brand and new to us. So I think it's a good point to call out that the thing we're missing is, say they're a Walmart shopper and they shop Oreo cookies at Walmart. They have never shopped Oreo cookies at Albertsons. And then you see them buy an Oreo cookie at Albertsons, we're gonna go, oh my God, huzzah, new to brand. That's not necessarily an accurate metric. So again, to the point of transparency of, are you being specific as it's new to brand in this store? I think the same with customer lifetime value as an expansion of new to brand. And then one of the things that I think we will push for customer lifetime value is working with the CPG to help define what that means to them. I think one of the issues that we've run into with the ROAS calculation specifically is there are very specified attribution windows. So we have a 14-day attribution window. You can't really change that attribution window. A 14-day attribution window makes sense for, maybe makes sense for cookies. Maybe it's a little long. Don't tell my boss I said that. But for, say, like a Dyson vacuum, that's a horrible attribution window because your consideration of that product is such a long time. So I think as we move towards these other advanced metrics, flexibility is going to be key. But great question. Anything else?
Hi, firstly, great presentation. Thank you for being so generous with your knowledge. As we explore retail media for awareness tactics, given that most of the KPIs for awareness tactics are CPM driven, how do you see retail media stacking up versus the traditional digital media channels that are built for awareness?
Yeah, great question. So I think if you're thinking about, say, I'll just use TikTok as an example. I think TikTok is the awareness tactic of the moment. If we are running TikTok with our audiences, we would put an upcharge on that CPM. And I think the question is going to be, is that upcharge worth it? Is that audience actually worth it? So I think that's going to be, I'm going to leave that hanging because I think that's going to be something yet to be solved.
Ask one more question.
Ah.
All right, last question.
It's because you didn't like my answer.
How do you see the importance of first-party data for CPG? I know you mentioned first-party data sharing for closed-loop attribution between Pinterest and Albertsons, but how do you see the importance of that type of data for CPGs?
So in my past experience, we've worked with a couple of CPG companies who have tried very, very hard to generate their own first-party data. And I think it really depends on the size of the CPG and how fresh that first-party data is. I think one of the issues of some clients that we've worked with is they do a one-time push, they get a bunch of first-party data, and then that data quickly goes stale. And so when we've looked at campaigns via a clean room, we've taken that first-party data, we've commingled it with our own, we've built out custom audiences. Those audiences don't actually perform much better than just our own first-party audiences. So that was a couple years ago. That was during my time at Roundel. I think I'm curious to sort of test into that space again, because it could be different. But that's a little bit of a tricky one. I've solved all of your problems. Everything with measurement is going to be fine going forward.